Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. As part of ICN School District Engagement Committee, we would like to welcome all of you for the awareness session on District 204 school boundary meeting. So as a parent, every one of us is very curious and excited to know what's going on the boundary changes. So when the curiosity and the excitement is there, of course, there would be a lot of miscommunication and rumors going around. So we thought, why not, call in the involved people who are actually part of the committee and also in the school board, and then, just hear from them what's going on the boundary changes in District 204. So that's the main, intention or the agenda of this program. So any program at ICN, before we start, we always start with the Quran recitation and translation. So today we have two young guests with us from the high school of District 204, Zaid and Afra. So Abdurrahman, can you bring Zaid, please?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم.
So inshallah, next we will have a translation by Afra Sayed. Afra.
In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, the most compassionate, taught the Quran, created humanity, and taught them speech. The sun and the moon travel with precision. The stars and the trees bow down its ambition. As for the sky, he raised it high and set the balance of justice, so that you do not defraud the scales. Weigh with justice and do not give short measure. He laid out the earth for all beings. In it are fruit, palm trees with date stalks, and grain with husks and aromatic plants. Then which of your Lord's favors will you humans and jinns both deny?
Thank you, Afra. Thank you, Zaid. So with that, I have a very important person of ICN with us today. So Abdurrahman, can you bring in that person, please? So we have Kashif Faqedrahman, President of ICN with us. So I would request Kashif to welcome our panelists and also the community.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you all. Really, it's an honor to host this event, and I would like to acknowledge and thank you, the ICN School District Engagement Committee, Faqedrahman, and the entire team for organizing this event. Mainly because there were a lot of questions, curiosities that we were seeing in the community. So this event that ICN is hosting and the School District Engagement Committee is stepped up to arrange our esteemed guest, Jason from the 204 school board member, Faqedrahman, to be here as well from the boundary committee to answer these questions. So instead of, the community members exchanging information, and there's sometimes misinformation as well. So I think one of the ideas the School District Engagement Committee thought that why don't we get the experts or the resources that you will get the information directly from the sources. So really, we hope that this will be a very beneficial program and that will answer a lot of questions that we all have. So with that, I really thank our guest speakers and the committee for arranging this program today, and hopefully we all will benefit. And thank you again all the community members from ICN community, and I know there are a lot of guests from outside ICN is here as well attending. So all of you, welcome, and let's have those our guests join the program.
Thank you, Kashif. Thank you for
Thank you,
welcoming
Arman.
us. Yeah, Jazakallah khair. So with that, I think Kashif nailed it down. So the main reason we wanted to have this event is to, just resolve all the miscommunication and rumors which going on. I hope like Fazita and Justin would be able to, do justification on their role today. So just a quick housekeeping before we get into our actual program. So it would be we started around like 6:02. So we are planning to complete it by 7 p.m. hopefully. So Justin, our District 204 board member, so will talk about like why and what's the need of the boundary change and how the decisions would be made, like who are the members who would be actually making the decisions. And he would talk about the entire process on the board side. So I would like to welcome Justin on the stage. Abdurrahman, can you just bring Justin, please? Hey, Justin. And we have Faqedrahman with us, who will talk about the boundary committee. She's part of one of the member in the boundary committee, and she would be going through, what's happening inside the, meeting rooms actually. So what process is being followed up there, what's going on. So Fazita will be talking about that. So before that, like Justin is by profession is an attorney, and he's also a current District 204 board member. And Faqedrahman, by profession, she's an entrepreneur, and she owns the eye level in Aurora, Naperville, I guess. So if your kids are, not good at math, so the to-go person is Faqedrahman. So Abdurrahman, can you please bring Fazita in as well?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam, Sister Fazita. So both of them will be speaking for approximately 15 to 20 minutes, followed by 30 minutes or 20 minutes of Q&A. So if you have already sent your questions using the link, so those questions would be answered. So rest assured on that. But if you have any other questions which came up in your mind, like now after like hearing from Justin and Fazita, feel free to post that questions in the chat. But small reminder and some norms to asking questions. First, please be respectful on how you ask your question. Please be relevant to the topic, be open, and be honest. So that's a request from the organizer's side. So without further delay, I would like to call on Justin to address our community. Justin.
Thank you, Rahman. Thank you to the ICN School District Engagement Committee. Let me introduce myself briefly. I'm a lifelong resident of the school district, having graduated from Wabanzi, Hill, and Clough. I live in Ashbury. I have 3 children, one at Crone, one at Nequa, and one who graduated from there. My mother and sister were teachers in the district, and my father was one of the founding members of the board of the Indian Prairie Educational Foundation, IPEF. I also served on that board before joining the school board. I've been on the school board for 8 years. My term is up in 2023. School board members are volunteers elected by the voters in the district to represent all of the stakeholders in the whole district. I have lived through every boundary change in the district, and this session will not resolve all the rumors, but hopefully it's a step in the right direction. As a disclaimer, I am not the school board. I am one of 7. My opinions are my own. I don't speak for the school board. No boundary changes are going to be made without public input at an official school board meeting. But why are we going through this process? Why are we going through it now? Why are we going through it during a pandemic? The last major school boundary change, attendance area adjustment, was done with the building of Matea, and that was over 10 years ago. And we've had a lot of development since then. So there's over and under utilization within the district. Some schools are so crowded that they don't have an art room and do art on a cart. Some schools are so underutilized that they can't offer the same classes or clubs because there's not enough students to do so. The great thing about our district is that we become so attached to the schools. We love them. They become part of our identity. So even if there is over and underutilization, people don't like to change. So we built these attendance areas for the schools, but they only last for so long. There's development, redevelopment, farms become subdivisions, malls become apartments, golf courses become townhouses. And over the years, we've made some Bandaid type changes to buy time, so we don't have to do a full boundary change or review. As developments have come online, we've tried to allocate them to underutilized schools. That has resolved so as not to impact the current residents at that school or the closest school. That has resulted in busing and extra costs and islands. So if you look at our boundary map, that is why there are some of the islands on the map. But you can only make Band-Aid changes for so long before it's necessary. Generally, the north side of the district is overcrowded and the south side is not. So if there's residential development on the north side, we can bus them down to the south to try not to impact the north as much. But then we continue to create these islands. So we've got an attendance area problem that we've been putting off and can't push off any longer. The pandemic made it even more acute when spacing, 6-foot distancing, 3-foot distancing became more of an issue. Where how do we open up as a school district safely with social distancing in overcrowded schools? It presented even greater challenges and showed that we needed to address this sooner. So the school board hired a consultant and formed a committee to make a recommendation. It started that process earlier this year. The consultant has done these many times, done them in the district many times. The boundary committee was charged with working through a lot of what ifs, different scenarios, and eventually there's a process. And the process was approved by the board. And the process will involve public input prior to presentation of proposals to the board. And the board meetings will involve soliciting public input. It's a board-driven process. The board controls how it runs and approved it. But that means also that the board can amend the process. Amending the process at this stage is difficult. And then there's an issue of fairness because the board agreed to a process earlier this year, and to do it at the end, there's a question of fairness to that. Generally, the boundary committee has members throughout the community, City of Aurora, City of Naperville, students from the high schools, people from our member groups, support organizations, IPBC, PDAC, Pages, PATS, and our district partners. There's Aramark, who does our facilities, First Student that does our buses, PMA, which is our financial consultant, Naperville Development Partnership, Township Assessor, and then each of the buildings. And then there was a selection, a lottery for a random component of it. Some groups are specifically not included at this stage. Homeowners associations, religious organizations, businesses, developers, realtors, To include all of the impacted parties would have made the boundary committee unworkable. It would have gotten bogged down in the process. And a lot of these organizations will have a chance to review some of the proposals and join in a unified opinion on that. The process of developing this committee can see that the end result of who's on the committee is not going to result in a perfect match of the student demographics in the district. You can't have a lottery and ensure that the makeup is the exact match to the student demographics in the district. And that was intentional. You want a part of it to be lottery based so as to remove some of the cognitive bias in selecting people from schools. And approximately a third of the committee was randomly selected. The pool of the candidates was selected based upon who applied. And there was a district-wide email sent out in May asking for people to submit their name if they wanted to be part of the committee. Approximately 200 people did so. The board committee will wrap up its work in December 8th, and they will make their recommendation to the board. But it's an ad hoc committee made up of a bunch of volunteers. So there is a possibility that the school board might need additional review from the board committee, the boundary committee. Because it's a board-driven process, once the board gets the recommendation, it can change the process. It could have additional meetings. It could have further workshops. The gambit of stuff that can be done by the board is really up to the 7 members. Let's see. There's been questions about trying to get the names of some of the people on the board committee, on the boundary committee. And I'm reluctant to do that at this point. Obviously, I think with enough due diligence, people can find out who is on the committee. But there is a lot of effort to try to provide input, public input, to the boundary committee members. And I feel that that's kind of circumventing the process that the board approved. It is necessary for the boundary committee to go through some of the concepts without public input. Not everything needs to be voted on. They need to have a chance to work through some of the issues, and there is places that have been approved for the public to provide that input. So that's why I'm reluctant to have all of the boundary committee members published. There is also, especially as a result of the back to school issues that we've been dealing with, there's a concern with kind of protecting some of the boundary committee members from harassment, bullying, doxing. There's been a lot of, these are emotional issues. It's personal, and it's rightfully so when boundaries are changed. But the people on the boundary committee should not be open and subject to some of these things. It's kind of what the school board members signed up for. And we've dealt with it. We dealt with it with the return to school, with the mask issue. And we are prepared to do it again with the boundary committee, the boundary issue. Some of the representatives have chosen to be more visible, as you see tonight, and some of them have chosen to be less visible, and I respect those decisions individually. I see that I'm running. I know that it's very stressful, and I know that it's stressful to everybody in the community to have to deal with the changes in attendance areas. And I know that we're still in a pandemic, but the pandemic highlighted the need for it. Overall, educate yourself on these issues, advocate for your family, but also consider the community as a whole. When you are advocating for your position to the school board, recognize that the school board is also the decider of the attendance adjustment areas, and making your plea. Think about going to a judge. How would you present your argument? You don't want to belittle the judge or belittle the decider of the decision, because then you will have less influence. We've had 95% of the emails and comments we've received have been very respectful, very researched, very data driven, and that's appreciated. We need that as a community, and that is the most impactful. So educate yourself, advocate for your family, and then consider the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. Yes, I mean, so sometimes, we see the board position is like a paid one, but again, I just want to stress it. It's a volunteering position, and you guys do a fabulous job for District 204 community. So some of the other members are also my very good friends. So you guys together, rock. Like as a community, we support you guys on the board side. So thank you so much, Justin, for that. I think you touched base some of the questions as well, but still, like some of the people are just joining. So probably when we actually go to the Q&A, I will just repeat that question. Probably you can just answer those as well. So with that, can I have Faqedrahman? So hello, Faqedrahman. So
how are you, brother?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. How are you, sister?
Good.
So for people who joined newly, so the person who was speaking with us was Justin Karubas, who is a District 204 board member, and we have Sister Faqedrahman with us. Sister Faqedrahman is an entrepreneur and by profession, so she's also part of the boundary committee member. She's one of the member in the boundary committee meetings. So she's going to go through with us what's really happening inside and what are the process being followed on the committee. So without further delay, Faqedrahman.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First, I would like to thank the ICN School District Engagement Committee for providing me with this opportunity to be here. Thank you, Mr. Karubas. That was a wonderful explanation of behind the scenes. I hope it has alleviated some of the concerns that people are having. My name is Faqedrahman, and we have been Aurora residents for the past 16 years. We have two girls. One is a junior in Vabansi, and the other is a 7th grader in Fisher Middle School. I volunteered to be in the boundary committee to not just represent our neighborhood and my girls and our friends and family, but also the learning center that I have in I-Level Naperville East, and wanted to represent the 204 district student families that come to our center. So I look at the entire 204 school district as in a more commoner kind of a way rather than just being a parent. Today I was requested to speak about what happens in the boundary meeting and explain the process in detail of what is happening once we enter that room. Before I start, just like Mr. Karubas said, I'm just one of the many members in the boundary committee, and it's not just my thoughts or point of view that I'm going to explain here. It's more of a generic thing. So I'm going to start and walk you through the process of the boundary committee information. So as Mr. Karubas explained, the timeline was we all received an email on May 18th from the school district to sign up for volunteering in the boundary committee. And I received an email confirmation on June 18th notifying that I got selected. So did many. I do not know on what basis it was done. On July 7th was our first boundary committee meeting. We have so far done 5 meetings, and we are on to the 6th meeting coming September 22nd, next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. in Still Middle School. And after that, we are having a public input meeting. It's a community forum on November 8th, 9th, and 10th. And I'll show you in which schools they are in, so you can make a note of it. After the boundary committee gives their recommendation, it should be approved by the school board, by December or early 2022, and they'll vote on the plan. Then after that, it comes to implementation in 2022 or 23 or later. So if you can make a note of the public input meeting dates, November 8th, Monday at Vabansi at 7 p.m. and Tuesday, November 9th, 7 p.m. at Nikwa Valley, and November 10th, Wednesday at Metia Valley. I would encourage all the public to be there, whoever is concerned, having questions and need clarification. That's the place you need to be. So the committee and the RSP takes into account and tweaks the plans accordingly, and then propose a finalized one. So these are the various components or teams that are involved in this whole process. First is the school board, who prioritized on the reasoning on why the school boundary changes should happen. The criteria was presented, and then there's the school administration, school district administration, and RSP, and the boundary team, and the public input from the community. It all amounts to the entire process here. So RSP is a third-party company that is aiding the IPS D204. And this is not the first time they are doing it. They have done it before as well. And they have also helped out 308 and Lake Zurich and many other school districts. They also bring in retired superintendents and school officials from other states as well to monitor the process. So you can learn more about them on the website, in the school district website. So the school board, they prioritized these 3 criteria as our guiding principles. So first one is the actually, these are the boundary criteria. And first one is the demographic considerations, which includes the housing type, the ethnicity and special programming. The next one would be the neighborhoods intact. As Mr. Karubas mentioned, there is developments all over the school district, and there are a lot of pockets of schools being allotted to different schools. It's like small islands throughout the district. And one of the criteria was to keep the neighborhoods intact, keeping in mind the developments that are happening, and plan for a long-term solution instead of having to do it every few years. And the third one is the fiscal consideration, which involves even the transportation, and all the budgeting related to moving the students from one neighborhood to another and all that. So it also includes a proximity to building. It also explained to us on these number of students being impacted because of the boundary change. So there are a few other criteria listed in the next slide. As I mentioned, it's the attendant areas, demographic consideration, the duration of the boundaries, feeder system. I'll later explain what the feeder system is and what the broken feeder is. And then the fiscal considerations, neighborhoods intact, and boundary change and transportation considerations. So here's a short video on what really happens during the boundary committee sessions. Let's go to the video. Okay, I think we're having some technical difficulty in playing the video with the audio. I think he is going to play it in the very end. But before I go forward with all the slides that I'm going to show after this is just, these are just the presentation slides that was available for all of us to view, and it is even available right now in their website, in IPSD 204 website. We'll share the link a little bit later at the very end of the slides. So I strongly encourage all our patrons to attend the meeting, or I can understand that it's not always possible for everyone to be present during the meeting that convenes every other Wednesday in Still Middle School for a couple of hours, but it would definitely make a huge difference. Being present there and just seeing the process would make a huge difference rather than me just explaining to you all. But let's go to the actual slide. Okay. So before we start, we usually what happens is during the meetings, we enter the meeting and there are about 10 tables inside the room. And as we enter, we are given a table number and we do not know who we are going to go and sit with. It's a random number of people sitting in the table, usually 5 or 6 people in each table, depending upon the student guest and, from other people from other districts. And so the number of people in each table differs, and we don't know each other. We get to know each other by discussing on our neighborhood, which neighborhood we are coming from, which schools our kids are studying, and just a small intro happens amongst ourselves. And then Rob or Dr. Talley usually takes over the meeting and they start presenting the slides. So when they are presenting the slides, we are also, each table is given the maps, the concept maps. We are presented with 1, 2, or 3 different concepts. When we initially started in the very first meeting, we were given options, option 1, option 2. So when I say concepts, they're just ideas. Then these concepts are being brainstormed by the members who are sitting in the committee, and expressing our concerns, and then writing it down on the maps. And these concepts are not the solution yet, so there's nothing to be worried about. I think that's what is causing all the panic. These are just ideas that are being brainstormed to provide an ideal solution for boundary changes. And the final plan, we get it only in early 2022 or later. So these are not final plans. So when I show the concepts, they change in every meeting that's happening so far. So we are on the 5th meeting. We finished our 5th meeting, heading towards the 6th meeting. So in the very first meeting, we had option 1 and option 2. And we had maps given to us reflecting the changes that are in option 1, and then reflecting changes in option 2. We have to read the maps and compare it with the presentation slides that's been given to us, which shows the numbers of the ethnicity, the housing type, the transportation, and the growth areas, the proximity to school, the number of students that are being impacted by the boundary change. All these numbers are being shown to us, and we compare it and see it visually in the map that's been given to us. And we write down all the concerns either in the map itself, and all our questions on the map, and it gets collected by them. And in the next meeting, we are presented with a plan that reflects or addresses our concerns. And we were presented with concept 1, 2, and last week they presented concept 3. Even with concept 1 and 2, can you go to the slides? So even with the concepts 1 and 2, we were provided with the concept 1 and 2 in the 2nd meeting and 3rd meeting, but by the 4th meeting, we had a different concept 1 and 2. It wasn't the same ones that we saw 2 weeks earlier. So last week, they presented us with concept 3, and all my slides are going to only show what was being presented to us in the last meeting to avoid any confusion. So as of now, these are the concepts. And I'm pretty sure we are going to, or I believe, we are going to have a little bit of a modified content on September 22nd meeting. They said they'll tweak it according to our concerns. So I'm going to quickly go through the concept 1. And if you can see, the summary says that, the 2 elementary schools are going to be offline in concept 1, and then 18 elementary schools have complete feeder. So I have to add that during the beginning of the committee meetings, the feedback was provided to have less broken feeders from middle school to high school rather than from elementary school to middle school. So initially I didn't understand the term broken feeder, and then I came to know what it was. So a broken feeder in very simple terms means like one school students, when they move to the next level. So for elementary school, when they go to middle school, they might go to 2 different middle schools. That's called a broken feeder. And the direct feeder is the entire elementary school students, 5th grade students, will be fed into a single middle school. So in our neighborhood, our homeschool is STEC, and STEC gets fed into Granger and Fisher as of now. So the neighborhoods north of New York Street goes to Granger, and south of New York Street goes to Fisher. So that's called a broken feeder. That's just an example. we are trying to minimize the number of broken feeders from middle school to high school rather than from elementary school to middle school. So that was one of the things that was discussed. And the concepts currently 1, 2, and 3 are trying to implement that in their plans. So as you can see, middle schools are incomplete feeders to the high schools, but there are like 3 elementary schools that have broken feeders according to the concept 1. Abu, can you go to slide number 23, please? Yes. So in this concept, one, it basically shows you the benefits and the drawbacks of this concept. Let's discuss the drawbacks first, because 2 schools are going offline, and there are 3 elementary schools that have the broken middle school feeders. And then high school boundary still is crossing over 59. Some of the neighborhood in 75th and Plainfield Naperville Road, they are all crossing and coming to Wabansi. So there are still some of them that they are crossing and coming to 59. And Eng Elementary and McCarty Elementary will be above 95% at least in one of the next 5 years. So we have to look at the maximum occupancy of each school while just looking through the concepts. So can we go to slide number 33? So this is concept 2. Please ignore the spelling mistakes on it. It was already there. In this, if you can see the drawbacks, 1 elementary school is being repurposed, only 1. And at that point of time, it was discussed as built up. And then there is an incomplete middle to high school feeders. And Fox Valley Mall will go to Metea Valley High School. Longwood Elementary will be at capacity at 2025 because nothing was being done in this concept for the Longwood Elementary neighborhood, and 4 incomplete elementary to middle schools. So 4 schools will have an incomplete or broken feeder. Abu, can we go to 32 slide, please? So in this, if you can see, this is a students impacted by the boundary change in concept 2. You can see 0% in Nikwa got impacted, but Wabansi got impacted by 11% and Metea by 18%. So this was, when you are looking at the slides that are available in the website, this is something that you can look at to see what percentage of students are getting impacted in each concept. Let's go to 41. So this is a concept 3. Maybe we can start from the beginning in concept 3 because this has been the source of okay. So if you see in the concept 3 high school, we do have the following changes, especially the Palte home housing development. That's all included in Nikwa. And 59 and south of 95th will be the break between the Nikwa and Wabansi. And for Metea, 75th and 34 as a break between Metea and Nikwa. So these were one of the most important changes that was being discussed in concept 3. And I want you to remember, again, this is concept 3, and whichever schools were steering, there was a lot of responses from the public regarding certain school changes. And I can assure you that was already talked or written on the maps when it was provided to us in the last meeting. And we, as boundary committee members, we are also aware of what's happening and how it's affecting the neighborhood. So we will keep an eye on it, and many other neighborhoods as well, Tallgrass, White Eagle, and many other neighborhoods as well, while we are meeting again in the next meeting, and keep you all updated. Can we go to the next one? Next, please. So concept 3 benefits. It's a significantly fewer islands, so they have eliminated the pockets, and Tallgrass subdivision does not break. There are no schools being repurposed. In fact, there were a lot of schools that were having, almost every school is going to have STEM program in it and STEPS, facilities. Complete middle to high school feeder accomplishes all guiding principles that has been given to us to look for. It accomplishes all boundary criteria, and demographics are equal between the schools, and current capacities were adjusted for potential additions and innovation spaces in all schools. So includes all the new developments. So it does not allow the capacity for growth at high school level, because almost all the high schools go up until 80 or 90, 80 to 90%. And then there are 9 broken elementary to middle school feeders. So that's quite a lot. There were 9 elementary schools that are going to be broken down, and we have given that as a concern. And then the funding source for the building enhancement. So this was proposed, one of the elementary school that was proposed for the building enhancement was Longwood Elementary. They were going to add 3 or 4 classrooms to it. And but it's a concept, it's not a plan, and they do have funding for that. But for the other school changes, the funding has not been secured yet, and the amount to update the spaces in each school is also unknown. So they were going to repurpose the Indian Plains High School, or these are just the concepts. Again, we keep saying the word concepts because it's not a final plan. These are just ideas being discussed. So in the end, I just want to say, whenever the meeting comes to an end, after we have given all the feedback, they usually take a poll with the committee members. So the poll does not ask, we have changed this, do you like this change, or nothing of that sort. It's more generic, and the more generic feedback is taken from all the members. So for example, they asked us after the last meeting, they asked us, which concept do you think is good for high school, middle school, and elementary school? So it can be concept 1 in high school, it can be concept 3 in elementary school, it can be concept 2 in middle school, it can be anything. So we have given our honest feedback on what we think serves our neighborhood the best. So the majority of the votes were for concept 1 and concept 3, and as of now, they are just discussing concept 1 and concept 3 is on the table, and they're going to discuss, tweak it, and present us a newer concept next week. So I hope I shared the process as much as possible, and it's more transparent, and I will keep updating in the group about the following changes that's going to happen in a few weeks. And I also strongly encourage the public to visit the website, see the presentation, see the video, so that, I know it's just a couple of hours, but it's really important for us to be engaged and be in the know of what's really happening, so we can all be, united. As a boundary committee member, I can say I'm just a volunteer. If I got into it because I applied, and I know someone who applied and didn't get into it, it can be me as well. So I'm just a commoner. We don't have any hidden agenda. We are working as in a very general idea. We are not playing any favoritisms or anything of that sort. So that would be my disclaimer. So anything that needs to be conveyed can always be brought to us, so we can also convey it to the committee, to RSP. Thank you.
Thank you, Fazita. Thank you so much. First of all, bottom of my heart, thank you so much for volunteering for this position. We know it's not a paid position. Like any parent, you also, I know, like as a family friend, like we know you have 2 kids, like who is in high school and middle school. You have to take care of them. You have to take care of them family. And there are many moms sitting in the committee. So hats off to all the moms and dads, whoever is over there. So thank you so much for doing this for District 204. Thank you, Fazita. So we have very interesting questions going on. I was just watching the chat, and Justin and you are going to have a good questions. So again, just a reminder, like all these are, either Justin or Fazita, all are volunteering members of the board and as well as the committee. So please be respectful on your questions and be relevant to your questions, what you are trying to ask. So without further delay, so let me jump on to the questions. Probably Justin, most of the questions is pointing towards the the committee members, like what is that? The first question asked was like, when is the tenure? The duration ending for all representatives or all the committee members. So can you answer that question, Justin?
Yeah, the boundary committee members' tenure will probably end at the beginning of December. That's their last meeting. That's when they make their recommendation. But I do put a caveat on there, is that it's the board process, and the board, there's a possibility that the board might ask the boundary committee for additional feedback depending on their review of the recommendation. Why did you make this recommendation? What were your thoughts? We don't like the recommendation, try again. So the board is in control of the process, and based upon its review of the recommendation, because there hasn't been a recommendation, the board hasn't reviewed any concepts or reviewed any recommendations. The process could change, but as scheduled, the beginning of December, the boundary committee will come to an end.
Thank you. And Abdurrahman, can you bring in Sister Zora? Because she was the one who should moderate the question. I think I jumped on it. Sister Zora?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Brother Rahman.
Sure.
So we have a few questions regarding the boundary committee. So another question, probably Justin, you had answered it in the beginning, but there are people who have joined later in the live video, and they want to know, so how can we obtain a list of the neighborhood representatives, and how is the boundary committee selected? So that's one of the questions.
Yeah, I'll review that again. The boundary committee has about 75 members on it. They don't all attend every meeting. They're volunteers. Life happens. And there was about 10 to 15 members selected from specific community groups: the city of Aurora, city of Naperville, student at each of the high schools, IPPC, PDAC, PAGES, PACES, PATHs. These are supporting organizations within the district. Some of our district partners: Aramark, that does our facilities, First Student, that does our busing, PMA, which does our finances, Naperville Development Partnership. These were specific community groups that we wanted to reach out to be involved with the boundary committee on the front end. And then 30, and then members of each of the schools. And they were selected based upon recommendations by administration. And in addition to the schools, one was selected from STEPS, and one was selected from the Prairie Childhood Program. In addition to that, 25 members were selected randomly, and that is, I think, how Fazitha joined the committee, by answering the application that was in the email that went out to the general community. We received 200 applicants, and those applicants were selected at random. So we tried to remove some of the potential for any cognitive bias in the selection of the members for the schools. We're reluctant, I am reluctant, to name each of the members and disclose all of the members of the boundary committee. After a diligent search, you could probably find out on your own, so it's not insurmountable. But I am concerned that people will use that information at this point in the process to try to jump in line in the process to then provide public input to that specific member. And we're trying to avoid that at this time, because the process has a ramp for public input, those dates that Fazitha mentioned, and there'll be additional time for public input once the recommendation is finalized and before the board. So I don't want the public input to put pressure, put bullying, put harassment, inundate some of these volunteer boundary committee members and circumvent the board approved process. We are getting a lot of emails and comments, and we're trying to follow the procedure as best as possible.
Thank you. I think that explains it quite well. I just want to do a quick time check over here, Brother Rahman. We are already at 7 o'clock mark. So
Yeah,
we have
that's a
quite few
good point,
questions, right?
Zara. Maybe we will just give a 10 minutes extension, probably 7:10.
Sure.
7:30 maybe. Yeah, please keep. And also, I just wanted to mention, like, there are some like public viewers, they are putting like multiple questions. So probably due to respect everyone's time, so we will try to pick like one question of yours. If you're putting like many questions, like we will just ask just one question from your side, and so that we can cover all the questions as much as possible. Yeah, go ahead, Sister Zara.
Sure, thanks. So this is a long question. It says the public is not allowed to participate or ask questions until the community forums in November and December. However, the concepts have already been formed and selected by committee members by then. Some of our subdivision committee members have yet to ask our opinion, so we do not feel our voice is being heard. By the time we get to speak, we feel the boundary committee will have made their decisions to present to the board, which is highly unfair. There needs to be a better way for us to communicate in the earlier stages. How do we let our voices heard? We do not like any of the three concepts set forth.
Once again, I go back to the board approved process. None of the concepts have been finalized. There hasn't been a recommendation. So interjecting as a public input at this time is premature, and it's kind of spinning the wheels. I think there's specific periods for when we can do this. Public input is very important. Don't get me wrong. It needs to come in. It needs to be a part of this, and there's no specific weight on any of this. If there is public input that comes in and says this process was wrong, this process was fatal, or if there's public input that says this should not be done regardless, the board's going to consider that. And so you can't put a specific weight saying public input is given a 20% opinion weight as you consider this. If there's a valid reason, we're rational people up there. If we're going to consider that and consider that important. So we value public input, but there's a proper time and place for it. If you want to provide public input prior to the specific times, email the board. We are reading each of those emails. You might get a canned response because we are dealing with a lot of emails, but we're reading everyone, we're logging everyone, and we're digesting that. Understand that we're also operating in a vacuum where we don't have a recommendation yet. So public input can be provided throughout. Email the board.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So I think the next question I will ask is, Zara, so is the boundary committee a true representation of our student demographics? So I got this question like many times from our community as well. So either Fazita or Justin, you both, any one of you can answer that.
I'll take it, Fazita.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does not represent our student demographics. I think we need to acknowledge that. And part of it is because we needed to take out this cognitive bias by having randomly selected people represent a third of the committee. So if the people that raise their hand to volunteer in May felt strong enough that they wanted to contribute to it. So there's, it would have been entered an additional bias if we then looked at those people that applied and said we needed a certain demographic to sit on the boundary. So it does not. That was intentional. I think what was more important was making sure that we had each of the schools represented, and there is a representative for each of the schools. It's not as clean as saying that there's one representative for each of the schools, because a person could have multiple kids at multiple schools. And so if I'm on the committee and I have a kid at Nequa and a kid at Crone, who do I represent? So you can never be as clean as finding the perfect volunteer to assist with the committee.
Got it. Thank you, Justin. And maybe this question probably points to Fazita. So is there any possibility, again, I think all you said was concept and nothing has been decided. I just want to ask this question because the question has been asked. So the person who asked the question and the other parents are, like hearing your answer. So is there any possibility that Tallgrass and Pencross Knoll would end up going to different elementary or middle school?
As of now, we won't know that. As I said, it's just concepts. We have not yet decided on like what middle schools or what high schools or what elementary schools are going to be assigned anywhere. So I would still wait until the board finalizes the plan. As of now, it's just concepts. There's no way to tell if it's going to happen or not.
Got it. Thank you, Fazita. Sister Zora, you want to get the next question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I do believe that you mentioned that there's a consulting firm which is advising the District 204 about the boundary. So there's a question which says, does this consulting company have experience in District 204? What kind of experience do they have with respect to our demographics and population distribution of our area?
The consulting firm has been in existence since 2003. They work in the Midwest generally. They have worked in the district at least 3 times prior. They've done demographic studies in our district while I've been on the board, so the last 8 years, and their accuracy has been over 95%. Been very acceptable. That's why we engaged them again.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what weight is given to each criteria and to public input? And another follow-up question is, meetings on 7th, 8th, and 9th November, do we need to attend all 3 meetings, or is just one good enough?
I think I answered the prior one about the weights. So moving through some of these questions, kind of in the interest of time, if you want to attend one meeting, that should be sufficient. Once again, more of the same input is not as impactful as grouping things together. If you hear 1,000 emails, it's saying the same thing. It's not as impactful as putting together a petition of 1,000 signatures, or coming together as an organization or a group representing people. Eventually, the process is going to be homeowners associations will voice their opinion. White Eagle homeowners association will probably come forth with formal homeowners association position. And those are different ways that organizations can come together to group their opinion. And that's a personal preference with me. At some point you hear the same thing over and over again, and it gets a little noisy. let's see, Pulte. There's reference in the comments to Pulte. There's references about 59. Those are all good, considerations. We have had developers. If you look at the district map, it's not just clean boxes with a school in the middle. We've got a big forest preserve in the middle. 59 was supposed to be all commercial, and the mall was supposed to, be in existence forever. So we're dealing with the changing demographics of our housing stock. Used to be more single family. Now it's higher density, multifamily. Commercial is getting redeveloped. So a lot of the changes, where the schools are placed on the map. Sometimes they're on the borders. Sometimes they're, in the middle of a subdivision. So there's a lot of different things that are valid points. I think we all acknowledge 59 is a busy road. Even though I used to ride my bike down it at one point, it's now it's difficult to cross.
Sure, thanks. Brother Rahman, do you want to go to the next question?
Yeah, sure. So I think, Sister Fazita, maybe this is pointing to you. So, at the last meeting, the committee gave higher percentage of votes to concept 1 for ICN middle school individually. At overall, concept 3 was voted highest. Why was that? The math does not add. So I just want to ask this question. So probably you can touch base the concept thing again one more time so that the question is answered. I don't know.
So I was surprised as well when the voting happened, because individually the concept 1 accrued the most number of voting in terms of elementary, middle, and high school. But when it was asked which concept do you think was the best, the concept 3 was voted the highest. So I was mildly surprised. But to answer your question, concept 3 overall had a lot of advantages and good points that would be good overall for the community. So weighing in between concept 1 and concept 3, that seemed to be more attractive, personally speaking. That's my point of view. But I really don't have an idea why that accrued more votes than the other. And even concept 2 was ranking higher in the last couple of meetings, but it got off the table after this meeting. So there is good in each concept, there is bad in each concept. We won't know which concept would be taken into account until we go to the next meeting or the next meeting. So how many other meetings we have 3 more meetings. So we'll see how they tweaked depending on our feedback, and then they will present us with a newer one, which I will, it will be available in the.
Thank you, Fazita.
Yeah.
So, respecting everyone's time, maybe I'll just go like one question to Fazita and one more to Justin, and then we will end this program. So, Fazita, how do we convey our concerns to the boundary committee? So, is there an email or phone number or whatever it is?
So as far as I know they are, as Mr. Karubas mentioned, some of the boundary committee members do not want to be, visible in terms of being in public because of all the negative comments they are receiving and everything. The best way would be, as I've seen many people do it, they have been emailing Dr. Talley or, Mr. Shipley, who's in charge right now of answering. I personally email him for any clarifications that I need. So that would be the person. Or wait, hold on, and then come to the public input meeting and then ask there.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Sister Fazita. And Justin, are the emails sent to the board also forward to the consulting firm?
Yes. All of the emails sent to the board are shared with Matt Shipley, the consulting firm, and Dr. Talley. And we're cataloging all that input, and we're all considering it. Some of it's going to fall by the wayside if it's an input on concept 1 and concept 1 is no longer there. But we are all sharing the information and considering it. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much, Justin and Sister Fazita. So there are some opinions and comments and some thoughts have been put in the chat. So I'm not just going to ask that due to respecting everyone's time. So if you have any particular question, so as told by Justin, so please send your concerns or suggestions or thoughts to the board email, District 204 board email. You can very well see them in their websites. So I think, Sister Zora, we don't have any other questions, right?
We actually have a few questions, but then with respect to the time, I'm not sure if we can take that.
Yep, I can understand. So if you are a ICN community member, please feel free to reach out to Sister Zora or myself asking your question. We will try to reach out to Sister Fazita and Justin to get back to the answers. And if you're not a ICN community member and if you don't know who's Rahman Khan is or Sister Zora is, so probably you can send an email to admin@icnmasjid.org. It's admin, ADMIN @icnmasjid.org. So those questions will be sent to us, and we will try to answer those questions to you guys. So Justin, you have any last words? And Sister Fazita, probably you.
Yeah, I go back to the main point is, we'll all get through this. It's going to be stressful. Educate yourself on what's going on. Advocate for your own family, but then consider the broader community as well. There's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of reasons for doing things. We need to do what's best for our own person and family and kids. But we also need to consider the broader community. So thank you. What I appreciate is we have a lot of actively involved parents in their kids' education, and that is very important for public education in our schools. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Justin. And Sister Fazita, any few words from you?
As I couldn't have said better than Mr. Karubas. It's been a good opportunity to be here, to be able to answer the questions as much as I can personally do it. But I'm happy to see the civic engagement in this, topic right here. The more the questions, the better clarity we might get. Be involved. Asking questions is okay, but also we need to be a little patient before we can come to a finalized plan, before we are getting all worked up. Yeah.
That's a good one for Sister Fazita. Be involved. Yeah. So thank you so much. I'm not sure if all the miscommunication or rumors have been addressed in this one meeting. Surely it won't. There is still a lot more questions from the parents and the community members. So where to send the email, admin@icnmasjid.org. It is in the comments now. And also you can reach out to any of the District 204 board members to get your answers done. So from the ICN community and other viewers who are watching this, thank you, Justin, and thank you, Sister Fazita, for your time. So from our bottom of our heart, again, we appreciate your time and effort volunteering for this position. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
It was really helpful. Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Alaikum salam.